Mance Rayder is one of the many book characters from the A Song of Ice and Fire series that, while they did initially make it into the TV adaptation Game of Thrones, their involvement in the story is cut short, with Mance surprisingly being killed off during Season 5, being burned at the stake by Melisandre after Stannis garrisons his army at Castle Black in the wake of the battle beneath the wall. Thus, Mance's role in A Feast for Crows and A Dance with Dragons is cut from the show. Not surprising, given how drastically the showrunners changed the events from the books, with the northern plotline in particular, while having some similar elements, almost ended up being completely different in most of the meaningful ways. From what we know of Mance Rayder's past, he was once a man of the Night's Watch before breaking his vow and abandoning his post, joining the Freefolk. By the timeline of the main books, he has become extremely influential among the Freefolk and is called King Beyond the Wall. His parents were said to be a woman of the Freefolk and a man of the Watch. After a group of raiders were put to the sword when Mance was a child, he was taken by the Night's Watch and raised as one of their own. He became a ranger of the Shadow Tower once he was old enough to join the Watch proper. Sometime between 286 and 288 AC, the then Lord Commander of the Watch, Corgal, travelled to Winterfell to meet with Lord Eddard Stark, with Mance among the Black Brothers escorting him. While at Winterfell, he encountered the young Robb Stark and Jon Snow playing a prank. He promised them he would not tell on them. Sometime later, Mance was attacked by a Shadowcat while ranging beyond the wall and was healed by a Wildling woman, a wise woman's daughter. While he took some time to recuperate, the Wildling woman mended his torn cloak with swatches of red silk. Upon returning to the wall, Sir Dennis Mallister, the commander of the Shadow Tower, ordered Mance to replace his mended cloak with a new one of uniform black. This infringement of freedom was one of the key reasons that caused Mance to abandon the Shadow Tower and live with the Freefolk in the way he wished. When Jon Snow asks Corin Halfhand why Mance left the Watch, he tells Jon the following: "For a wench, some say. For a crown, others would have it." He liked women, Mance did, and he was not a man whose knees bent easily. That's true. But it was much more than that. He loved the wild better than the wall. It was in his blood. He was a wildling born, taken as a child when some raiders were put to the sword. When he left the Shadow Tower, he was only going home again. Over the next few years, in the lead up to the start of the book series, Mance is gathering various tribes into one single host, seeking support from clan mothers and magnars. He made peace between Harma Dogshead and the Lord of Bones, the Hornfoots and the Night Runners, and then the men of the Frozen Shore and the Ice River clans. Opposed by 5 other would-be kings beyond the wall, Mance gained the support of Tormund of Ruddy Hall and Styr of the Thens, and slew the 3 rivals who refused to submit. While we don't learn this till much later on, Mance is technically present in some events seen in A Game of Thrones. Hearing of King Robert Baratheon's planned visit to Winterfell to see his friend Lord Eddard Stark via his sources in the Night's Watch, Mance, inspired by the legend of Bael the Bard, decides to take part in the event himself, as it was not an everyday occurrence for a king to travel all the way to Winterfell. He scaled the wall near Longbarrow, purchased a horse south of the New Gift, and journeyed to Winterfell. Mance's presence is unbeknownst to both Eddard, who does not remember Mance from his previous visit years prior, and Benjen Stark, who had never met Mance despite being in the Watch for a few years. Under the disguise of a musician, Mance plays the lute during the feast for Robert. It is said that he meets his wife Dalla upon returning beyond the wall after the feast. As seen in the events of A Clash of Kings, following growing rumours about Mance Rayder and the Wildlings deserting their villages, the Night's Watch assembles in force in a great ranging beyond the wall to investigate. While staying at Craster's Keep, Craster informs Jeor Mormont, Lord Commander of the Watch, that Mance is gathering wildlings in the Frostfangs. For what purpose, he does not know, but Jeor fears that Mance intends to strike south against the 7 Kingdoms and rain havoc in the lands south of the wall. During the events of A Storm of Swords, Mance has his followers dig graves along the Milkwater River in search of the legendary Horn of Winter, said to be capable of toppling the wall. The horn is not found, with many not even sure it ever existed at all. When Jon Snow meets with Mance in the Frostfangs under the pretext of joining the Freefolk, he sings the Dornishman's wife. Jon mistakes the more distinctive Tormund and Styr as Mance, given they look more traditionally wildling. Mance sends Styr to climb the wall and attack Castle Black from the south. He also sends Jon with Styria's group to test his loyalty, but after climbing the wall, Jon manages to escape at Queen's Crown and make it back in time to warn the Black brothers at Castle Black about the upcoming attack. After Styria's attack fails, Mance attacks the wall with his main force directly. Despite his huge number, the Night's Watch, under the command of Jon Snow, are successful in keeping Mance's forces at bay. Aware of the low number of men left in the Night's Watch, Mance eventually sends a request for a parley to Castle Black. Requesting an envoy is sent to him, so Alistair Thorne and Janos Slynt send Jon, secretly ordering him to assassinate Mance. Displaying a huge horn in his tent, Mance threatens to use this supposed Horn of Winter if he's not allowed to pass through the gate peacefully. However, Mance reveals to Jon that the Freefolk, including his own people, have been hunted by the others and their wife on their march south, and are unable to stop them. His true aim is therefore not to destroy the wall, but to use it as a shield against the others, and to stop them from adding the Freefolk to their growing number. During the parley, rangers from Eastwatch by the Sea and the southern army of Stannis Baratheon unexpectedly arrive. Although Mance personally leads a wedge of mounted Freefolk against them, the disorganized Wildling army breaks once Mance's horse goes down. While this is all happening, Mance's wife Dalla goes into labour and dies giving birth to their son. Mance himself is captured by Stannis and held captive at Castle Black, where his wounds are treated by Maester Aemon Targaryen. Stannis Baratheon speaks with him, but feels he has no other choice but to sacrifice Mance to R'hllor, the Red God, once he is strong enough. At Castle Black, Mance's son is given over to Dalla's sister, Val, while the wildling girl Gilly serves as his wet nurse. Val requests to be allowed to see Mance and let him hold his son once. Jon Snow presents the request to Stannis, but is denied. During the events as seen in A Feast for Crows, fearing that Stannis Baratheon will allow his Red Priestess Melisandre to sacrifice Mance's son in the belief that Mance's title of King Beyond the Wall could be constructed as his child having royal blood, Jon Snow, by now the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, sends Gilly and his friend Samwell away from Castle Black and forces her to leave her own son behind, secretly taking Mance's son instead. Gilly later suggests to Sam the name Aemon Stillsong for Mance's son. During the events of A Dance with Dragons, Mance is supposedly burned alive by Stannis, with the surrendered Freefolk, members of the Night's Watch, Kingsmen and Queensmen there all to bear witness. Jon Snow orders him killed by archers of the wall during the burning to give him a quick death. In actuality, the man burned is in fact Rattleshirt, the Lord of Bones, who is glamoured by Melisandre's magic to appear like Mance, while the actual Mance is glamoured by a ruby worn at his wrist to appear as Rattleshirt. Sparring with this so-called Rattleshirt in the yard of Castle Black, Jon is shocked by the man's speed and skill, not knowing he's actually Mance. When word reaches the wall that a supposed Arya Stark is to wed Ramsay Bolton of Barrowton, combined with Melisandre's vision of a girl in grey on a dying horse, Melisandre offers to send Rattleshirt to retrieve Arya, but Jon refuses. Not trusting the Lord of Bones, Melisandre reveals Mance's disguise to Jon to make him reconsider this offer. Jon holds Mance's son, so Mance would do everything in his power to rescue Jon's sister for the sake of the baby. However, Mance does not know that his son is in fact heading south with Gilly, and the babe Jon has is Gilly's own son. Lord Roose Bolton, the new Warden of the North, later decides to move his son's wedding to Winterfell. No longer appearing as Rattleshirt, the brown-bearded Mance takes 6 spearwives with him to find this Arya Stark: Rowan, Holly, Squirrel, Willow, Witch-Eye, Frenya and Myrtle. He arrives at Winterfell as a bard under the assumed name Abel, an anagram of Bale, and he claims that the women are his camp followers and relatives of his. Mance performs throughout the wedding and subsequent feast at Winterfell. With Winterfell snowbound from a blizzard, Mance's spearwives kill several northern men. Suspicion is then cast on Theon Greyjoy at first, then the Manderley Knights, causing tension in the castle between the Boltons and other northern houses and House Frey. They also receive the help of a reluctant and fearful Theon to help them free this fake Arya Stark. Though Theon knows the truth of the matter and that she's really Jeyne Poole, but does not disclose this information. Tensions explode in the castle when little Walder Frey is murdered, though the spearwives claim it was not their doing. Theon assists Mance's spearwives in rescuing Jeyne, but when Jeyne gives away their position by screaming, Theon and Jane are forced to jump from Winterfell's battlements to the snow below. It is reported in a letter to Jon, purportedly from Ramsay Bolton, that Mance has been captured. Ramsay claims Mance has been thrown in a cage which is exposed to the elements, and the 6 spearwives that came with him have been killed and skinned. Allegedly, Mance is being forced to use their sewn together skin in the cage as his only source of warmth, and until The Winds of Winter is hopefully published, that is all we currently know of Mance Rayder. For me, Mance being cut from the show and actually being burned alive by Stannis, rather than him being glamoured as Rattleshirt, really did irk me somewhat, as I love the northern storyline in the books, and the show actually killing off Mance was the first indication for me things were going to play out very differently in the show. I personally have never really understood the choice of the showrunners to water down the northern plotline to the extent they did, where it is almost completely unrecognisable, with only some fading elements of similarity. But finding out what exactly is happening with Mance at Winterfell, and if he's even alive at this point, is one of the elements I hope to find out about in The Winds of Winter, should it ever actually come out. Many other aspects of Mance are also greatly changed. Namely, we get very little of his backstory and trips to Winterfell in the show, and of course, Dalla and Bal are both cut from the show. He also doesn't have a son in the show, therefore Jon's baby swap never happens in the show. So, when Sam and Gilly head to Old Town, she's in fact taking her own child with her, and not Mance's son. It really sums up to me how several seemingly minor changes at the time can lead to so many northern characters having reduced roles or being cut entirely, and how it all adds together to create a story that is extremely different from the source material.